is going on, everybody? Wally here with a AKU engineer setup tutorial tip and trick, kind of how I like to play engineer. Now, I get questioned a lot on my stream, and I see a lot of good information out there, and I just want to give you guys my 2 cents on how I play the engineer class. Now, this may not work for you, but in the past it's generally worked for me. This is one of my better games right here, and I edited down most of the footage where it's mainly ground footage, but I want to say I think it's like 70-30. Most of my kills come from the ground, and I think the rest come from vehicles. Although all you're going to see here in the footage is just me using the AKU with the anti-tank setup. Now, my basic setup for the AKU is pretty standard. It's just the flash hider vertical grip with a laser sight and a coyote. It's pretty much almost identical to every single setup I run on almost every gun. And the reason for that is it's just a very forgiving setup. The flash hider has no penalties, and individuals cannot see your muzzle brake. Now, that doesn't really matter much, but in a sense, you really almost sometimes don't want to run any kind of barrel. In the past, I have ran the heavy barrel and the folding grip on this, and the angle grip, both are the same, and I found that you do see a little bit more accuracy for the gun. It is a little bit more of a laser beam, but the recoil is slightly, I would say, slightly over. You can't really control it too much, and it's something that I kind of like, just dislike in general. I like being able to tap fire towards targets and not really worry about missing shots because of recoil. So I'll switch it to the ergo grip or the vertical grip and put on the flash hider. Flash hider, again, has no penalties. And the ergo grip is one of those grips that has an underlying benefit. And the benefit is when you're strafe aiming or ADSing and strafing at the same time, it decreases some of the penalty when you're moving while you're shooting. And that works brilliant for me because anytime I'm ADSing, I'm always moving. The only time I will plant my feet is when I know I'm not going to get shot at from any of my sides. Now, you can't account for that. Most of the time, you don't even know where you're going to get shot from, so you have to be aware. That's the reason I run vertical grip on almost every single gun I use. The ergo grip is the same, and it's just my recommendation for getting potentially better shots. It's like they always say, a moving target is harder to hit. Well, that's goes tenfold in this game, so I would recommend it. The second thing I would recommend is a rocket launcher that you're comfortable with. For me, I'll switch between the SMA and the SHRA. Now, the SMA is that fire and forget kind of rocket that isn't the slam, but it goes in a straight line incredibly fast and does almost as much damage as the RPG. It's right under the RPG with damage, but it flies incredibly fast. It's one of those rockets that's great for taking down air vehicles or hitting tanks and then ducking behind cover very quickly and not worrying too much about the drop of the weapon. So I'd recommend that, although I do run the SHRA, and the SHRA is one of those ones that's just fun to run. It's just a fun rocket. You do make yourself incredibly vulnerable when you shoot it, but when you get kills with it, and when you take down choppers or air vehicles or whatever with it, it's beyond satisfying. It's one of those things that, again, I would recommend running if you want it. They do the most damage. I think almost the most damage. I think they're right up there with the RPG. I don't have all the tables in front of me. I know they do a lot of damage. I think the front shot's like a 21 or a 22. Back shots do 46 or 47 or something like that. Side shots do 36 depending on reactive. It's just a good rocket launcher. Now, of course, the setup always can vary for you. I always generally run the anti-tank setup, but I've been known to switch it to the offensive setup. But most of the time on a map like this, where you know it's vehicle intensive, you want to run something that can take down vehicles. Infantry is one thing. You can take down infantry with this gun and with the setup. You could pretty much just mow through any individual in front of you. It's just one of those guns that's incredibly powerful. So infantry really isn't the problem. I would say the biggest problem you have is air vehicles and, of course, running into too many people. You have to understand that when you're playing by yourself, and I assume that most of the people that play by themselves, you have to be accountable and responsible for yourself. So in most situations, whenever I'm playing by myself, I will play incredibly passive. I'll be like a passive aggressive. Sometimes I'll charge at somebody. Sometimes I will just not even do anything and completely go around. Most cases, though, I like to play very non-aggressive. I like to sit around, make sure I know my surroundings, know what's going on, and pick a scenario that I know I can win. I know I have the advantage. It's basically picking apart the battlefield so that you win every single engagement in your mind. If you go up before each of your engagements and you kind of play it out in front of you, play it out in your head, all right, this is the play I'm going to make, this is how I'm going to do it, I'm going to go up these stairs, and you play it all out in your head, I would guarantee you 9 times out of 10 you're going to go in there winning a gunfight. Now, suffice to say, it's not that I win every gunfight, because I'm sure plenty of you have seen my stream and the footage I've shown up with. I definitely lose a lot of my gunfights, and there are a lot of players that are much, much better than me when it comes to skill and outthinking me. So it's not to say that this is the strategy that will win you every single gunfight. It's just to say that if you go in there and visualize how you're going to play, you're going to do much, much better, in my opinion, especially on a map like this. Now, most of this map, I'm sitting here going back between the A and the B flag. And the general reason is because I hate it when the enemy team has your back flag. And generally, on this map, it's not really your back flag because there's not really a middle flag. C is semi the middle flag, but since the building falls and you can get boats to go across and a transport helicopter that all it has to do is fly straight to get across, it's not really your back flag. Most of the time you'll see the enemy has A or E in most of these games, and it's just because it's easy to get to. But like I said, in a map like this, you want to run a gun that has the ability to have a mid to long range, I guess, apprenticeship in that region. You can run the AK-5C. It's another great gun that allows you to, it fills that niche of being able to do almost every range. ACR is another one of those guns that once you understand the recoil pattern and kind of how to tap fire with it, you can get away with doing a lot with it. But those are the 3 guns that I would highly recommend. You can run the M4, but the M4 is pretty inconsistent, at least for me. And you can run the SG553. It's basically the ACR, except it's a little bit different. But I would say the biggest thing about playing engineer class is how you decide to approach your engagements. You always want to approach from the advantage, map out your cover in front of you, and use whatever ability you have to basically defeat your enemy. Now, that's not to say, like, well, you should use the MPT law and staff shells and active radar, because obviously that's using whatever you can to beat your enemy. I'm saying that you want to be smart about how you approach. 9 times out of 10, when I'm capping the B flag, I'll always go sit over here in the bar, because it offers the most cover and the most openness in front of you. While the enemy team does have potential for cover, most people will just rush you. Your only weak side is your right, and you have to continually check that. That's just a basic rundown for that flag. But basically, if you go through a flag and pick out its strengths and weaknesses, you can potentially play 10 times better. Now, that's just my recommendation. I don't have, obviously, the tricks to play as great as some of those good competitive players, but I would say that if you play smart and generally approach your situations with your head and not just your gun skill, 9 times out of 10 you're going to do very, very well on the ground. This has just been my generic, I would say, engineer setup. If you guys want to see how I play medic or any other class or any of my setups, just feel free to ask me. I'm probably going to do a few more of these videos, just basically how I do my setups and how I approach different maps. I might do one on every map and just show you how I approach maps. I hope you guys enjoyed this footage, and if you guys want to see more, just hang around. That'll do it for me. Peace.